Welcome to People, Places, and Parables, highlighting people and the positive effect they have in our community.
Hello, everyone. This is Chris. I'm your host with People, Places, and Parables. Now, my guest today is Pat LaMarche.
I don't know why
And
I thought you were going to say, even though I know the name of your podcast, I don't know why I thought you were going to say people, places, and paranoia.
oh no, I don't have that issue. But
I'm
the
like, all right.
reason the reason that this podcast started, this is my fifth interview, is because Pat was kind enough to refer Max Goller to me to do an interview, a whole hour long, which is a walk in the park for me because I'm such a chatterbox. And it dawned on me, I missed radio, and I love music, but the one thing I did like about news, not the bleed and lead stuff, but the stuff that I really loved is interviewing people and learning. And I know after you remember Joni Averill, she did a wonderful column every week for the Bangor Daily News to highlight a handful of nonprofits every single week. And when she retired, I don't know if they couldn't replace her, didn't replace her, but I remember thinking, man, that would be a fun gig to have. And that was years ago.
I love
So,
Joni.
oh, she is a wonderful lady. And without any further ado, Pat has a bazillion hats on. She's got her readers on today so she can hold her hair back and doesn't need a hat. But what we're going to be talking about today has several different names, but the skinny of it is they have people from all over the United States making blankets, quilts, afghans, and they are displayed out in public. There's a display coming up, I believe, in New York City. And they, after they're done, they are distributed to people who are struggling. And my wife makes a lot of quilts, and one of the things that she pointed out was the comment about one of the recipients of one of her quilts is that the woman felt seen. And in this day and age, that means a lot because there's so little empathy in the administration right now for people that are struggling. So without that anymore, I'm going to send it over
Well, can
to
you,
Pat LaMarche.
let's just use Robin for 1 minute, your beautiful, wonderful, intelligent, brilliant, creative wife. She makes these incredible works of art. Her quilts are literally second to none. Uh, and she is the queen of the theme. She does incredible. We've had people pick out a quilt of hers because it was all hunting and fishing stuff. You don't think about people who have nothing daydreaming for a moment about what their hobbies used to be,
Oh,
or
wow.
what their joy was, right? Back when they had the luxury not of working 3 jobs and then trying to find a place to sleep each night. And so she makes these incredibly themed blankets, and the blanket that sticks out to me the most of your wife's blankets, although she's done so many gorgeous ones that it's in the now 6 years we've been doing this, is the one she made that was a child's blanket. And we had a display in Maine. It was the Maine one we had. And
Hmm.
we don't ask for kids' blankets. We do, of course, accept them because plenty of kids experience homelessness. Um, Far too many, horrible amount. But we ask for a certain size, 45 inches by 80 if you're making it for a single, and 60 inches by 80 if you're making it for a family. Um, and that's because when we lay the blankets out in the massive display, it's easier to lay them out if they're all the same length. You're making a grid. So if you've got blankets that are all different lengths, it's a little harder to make it work out. We accept blankets of every size, and we don't ask for baby blankets and kids blankets because we don't want to get all baby and kid blankets. We want,
Hmm.
and because we always end up with about 200 baby blankets. So she had made this one absolutely beautiful blanket, and we had done a special April event last year. The National Coalition for the Homeless asked all awareness raising organizations to try and do something in April on the anniversary of the dismal hearing for Johnson versus Grants Pass, which legalized the criminalization of homelessness. So we did this day of action, and we took Robin's quilt to the main mall, which is where our display was. Only time I've ever been inside. And this woman was working there and experiencing homelessness.
Oh, wow.
Because, you know, the mythology that it's just people who don't work is crazy. And so she had a child and they were living in their car. And she was just marveling over this blanket and shared her story with us. And I said, well, it's really important we have this blanket for the display because it's so beautiful. And, you know, the point isn't that we give blankets to people who are cold. That is part of it.
Mm-hmm.
We give handmade blankets to perfect strangers from perfect strangers. And I don't like to say total strangers because I really think these people are perfect. These perfect strangers, they sit down for 100 hours and they create something for someone they'll never meet just because they need beauty and love. Holy smokes, right?
That's
So
powerful.
so I said, "Can you leave this beautiful piece with us? Pick it up on your way done when you're out of work." So she came back and she was in tears and we gave her the blanket for her daughter, right?
Wow.
And we don't get to see a lot of that
Mm-hmm.
face to face who gets the blankets because we mostly work through agencies to distribute them because we're distributing usually 1,000 at a time. Uh, but it is really phenomenal every time we've gotten to sit and talk to someone who's experiencing homelessness and then gets this level of kindness. It's kind of breathtaking. It's breathtaking to see the display. If people want to go to memorialblanket.org, you can see pictures from prior years. The other thing I'd like to say is I apologize that the name is never consistent. That's why we use hashtag Memorial Blanket a lot, or we use memorialblanket.org. And that's just because when we started this thing, and I know that that's part of what I'm supposed to tell you is how it started. But when we started this thing, it wasn't supposed to last.
Mm-hmm.
It was this haphazard, like, we'll do this thing. And it was so enormously successful. So unbelievably satisfying and rewarding
Mm-hmm.
that it just keeps happening like magic.
It's funny because I just interviewed Scott Party recently. He has 21 sober living homes.
Wow.
When he started, he had no intention of even starting one. He was told by his sponsor, he said, nobody's running the AA meeting in Penobscot County Jail. You're going to do it. So he did it. And he said that
Wow.
he witnessed people being released at midnight in downtown Bangor. He said the people were going back to encampments, the people were going back to bad environments, like, as he put it, crack houses. He said they didn't have a chance. He paid his house off, his own home, and then he got the idea to get one home, which turned into another home. And the structure that they have, Pat, is unbelievable. It's like, I remember starting Welcome to Housing. It was a whim. I had so much fun raising money for the homeless shelter when I turned 40, and the opportunity came up, and Dennis, who's very nice but very stoic, and I'm a ricochet rabbit, and he was excited to have me come in. And when he explained to me that people started with nothing, no bed, no table, no anything, all I could think of was like, wow. So they're starting over. They want to go to a job interview. They've been sleeping on the floor. They've been eating fast food if they've been eating anything. And you're not going to feel to look your best. I think the thing that I love about your project, and I know that Robin does too, is the humanity that it adds. So many of the things that we're experiencing now, and COVID really highlighted it. The silver lining of COVID, or the silver lining of the flooding we had back in Maine, or the great big ice storm that we had. Trauma like that brings people together. It
Yeah.
really does. And I keep thinking to myself, if the president and the administration were to go to see the Wizard of Oz, I would hope that they have more hearts to hand out and empathy. And it's just fabulous. Now, tell us some of the places. I know you're on the Capitol lawn, which is really cool. Was that one of the first years?
That was the second year. So we did the first year in this little town I live in, Carlisle, Pennsylvania, which is an historical landmark. George Washington lived here. It's where he mustered the troops for the Whiskey Rebellion. I live right next door to the church he used to go to. Um, he he We also were, Jeb Stuart blasted his way through here on the way to Gettysburg. We have cannonball holes that are stenciled all through town, you know, and we are the site of the Carlisle Indian Industrial School where Jim Thorpe was
Oh, no
student.
kidding.
And that is now still it's the second oldest continually open military base in the country, and it's the U.S. Army War College, which is the graduate school to West Point, basically.
That's unreal.
And so Carlisle, Pennsylvania has only got 18,000 people, and it's half the size of Bangor, but we are a suburb of Harrisburg. We're halfway to Gettysburg, so you know, it's a neat. Plus, we have more retired colonels living here than anywhere else in the country because of the U.S. Army War College. So it's just an interesting place. The world's largest car shows. 80,000 people come here for car shows on different weekends through the summer. But I ended up working in Carlisle, Pennsylvania because I hate the sentences I say in my life because they're so stupid. But when I ran for vice president, I don't know if you remember,
I do.
I lived in homeless shelters all over the country, and when the
Great
election
books that you've written too.
when the election cycle was over, I wrote a book about the people I met. And a minister in Carlisle read my book and called me up. I was writing for the Bangor Daily News and bartending at the Senator Inn and Spa in Augusta. You know, I would wait on people and say, "You look like Pat LaMarche," and I'd say, "Oh my God, I love her." And so I was working there, and I'm in the grocery store in the pickle aisle, and the phone rings, and it's a minister from Carlisle, Pennsylvania, who says, "I just read your book." And I said, "Oh, that's lovely, thank you, but I'm in the pickle aisle. Like, what can I do for you?" And it was Shaw's right there on Western Avenue. And he said, "Well, I run a homeless shelter, and you need to come and work in it."
Oh, wow.
And I said, "Did I mention I'm in the pickle aisle?" Like, what I'm talking about.
Would you like dill or gherkins?
Yeah, exactly. You know, I got to go back to it. So I thanked him. I said, "Look, you're super polite, but I know how this game works. You know, I'm completely cynical and jaded by now. I just got beaten in a race for vice president by a man who shot his friend in the face." And,
Elmer Fudd personified.
yeah. So I really was pretty cynical. And I said, "Like, I'm not driving all the way to Carlisle, Pennsylvania to find out you hired from within. Somebody else got the job you're talking to me about. I don't need I'm so grateful for the attention and your kind words about my book, but yeah, thanks, but no thanks." So he says, "How about if I come and take you out to lunch?" And I said, "You know, I live in Maine." And he said, "I know." And the next morning he got up at 2 a.m. and he drove, and we had lunch in Augusta. And we talked for about 4 hours, and then he drove back to Pennsylvania. And he was the most wonderful, loving, kind, sweet man. So he called me, got about halfway back to Pennsylvania, and he called me up and he said, "All I have to do is have you meet the board of directors because it's a nonprofit." He said, "And then I want you to come and work. Your heart is where these people need, you know." And I said, "I loved you. I'm so glad I met you. But again, I'm not driving to Pennsylvania for a job I might not get. I appreciate it. No harm, no foul.
Yep.
And thanks, but no thanks." So he called me back the next morning and said, "I told the board they're hiring you without meeting you." And I packed my little Honda. I had the contents of my car. My kids were, one was in college and one was graduated. And I drove to Pennsylvania, slept on the floor for 6 weeks till I could get a bed.
Wow.
And I went to work with people experiencing homelessness. And I did it for the better part of a decade. And so I went from being an observer as a member of the media to, you know, fighting with HUD and the Department of Education and the Veterans Administration and Health and Human Services. I mean, there are 5 agencies that deal with homelessness, and everybody's got a different, none of them, you know, FEMA. So 15 years later, I wrote a follow-up to that book that's called Still Left Out in America. And it's a tome. And it's not just the stories of the people I've met all along the way, but it's also how the government interacts with them. Now, since January 20th, 2025, you can throw half that book right into a paper shredder because the United States federal government's been dismantled in so many ways.
Definitely.
But it's still, I don't even know what to say about I work now as a journalist, but one of the things that I've done in all these years I worked in homelessness was candlelight vigils.
Mm-hmm.
I've done so many candlelight vigils. Oh my God. And you stand there and everybody really means it.
Mm-hmm.
And you read the names of the people who died on the street that year and nothing changes.
And it's frustrating. And you and I have both seen the architecture in some cities where they put spikes on any place that a person can lay down. I think what you're talking about too is so similar. I talked with Jason Parent. He runs the community action program, Aroostook County, and they recently took over Washington and Hancock County. Washington's a really tough situation now because of lack of jobs and so forth. But one of the things that he explained to me is he basically went and visited all the programs that they took part in. He went to meetings about the heating assistance. He went on the transportation, and I think that the issue is so many people have fear, whether it's homophobia, Islamophobia, all these racism things. It all goes to fear. I made a meme recently that said erase stigma, increase empathy. People that are struggling with homelessness, substance use disorder. I always have to remember substance use, not substance abuse disorder. And the third being mental health issues. And I have a cousin who has schizophrenia. And to understand that they're not the boogeyman, that take the time to learn their stories so you can help and not hinder. I lost a brother 2 years ago to his alcoholism, and I worked at Hope House as a great national campaign called Treatment Works. And the one sentence that really fits with when you're trying to explain it to people, trying drugs or alcohol is a choice. Getting addicted to them is not. And there's so many people, they think that they're witnesses to what goes on, but they're just afraid to get involved. And you and I have both done fundraising. The toughest fundraising that I ever had to do was for Hope House.
Yeah.
The other tough population are senior citizens, because I think people are afraid of getting old. The easiest thing in the world was the March of Dimes, American Cancer Society, anything to do with cute little puppies and kitties, like the Humane Society. They pause on parade. But in your travels, what are some of the stories that you've heard from people that have been on the receiving end of blankets, or people that you might have met that have been homeless that are now getting back on their feet? Because I run into them quite a bit with what we do.
Oh yeah, you are at the point where people are ready to start to rebuild their lives from the days when they thought they're I used to, when I ran a homeless shelter, especially the emergency shelter, because I've run 2 down here in Pennsylvania now.
Mm-hmm.
You meet people on the worst day of their life. And you know what? Their lives probably sucked before that day, but it actually got worse. And I ran out of the thing I ran out of most in my office was Kleenex, because people present themselves especially once they're willing to finally give up the fact that they're going to have to go into a shelter.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a horrifying thought, right? And anecdotally, in the span of the better part of 10 years when I was working in shelters here, we kept just rapacious statistics, right? We were just vehemently kept statistics, and importantly so, because you can't apply for funding and you can't without documentation. 55% of the people that I sheltered in those years, with the help of my community, had an income, and 30% more were their children. 85% of the people in my shelter were the working poor and their kids. We talk about substance use disorder, and we talk about mental illness, and we talk about developmental delays, but that is such a tiny fraction of the people experiencing homelessness. It is the most visible fraction of
Mm-hmm.
it. It's the person who has nothing left to lose, that's who you can see. The person who lies at school and says, I can't go to the pizza party, because that person, they're hiding their homelessness. And people experiencing homelessness do a beautiful job of hiding their homelessness, because people don't want to hire them. People don't have anything to do with them. They lose their apartment. They don't want their job to know,
Mm-hmm.
right? I've had children that start school in winter boots in the middle of August They still go back to school. If they got winter boots. Why? Because they have the shoes they had when they became homeless.
Wow.
They're still wearing them, and there's nobody buying them new shoes to go back to school. So the reality of it is so individual and so stark and unpredictable. And I'm going to tell you something no one knows yet.
Okay.
And I will answer your question. It's not I didn't hear it, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm in my own head interrupting myself, so forgive me.
It's
But
okay.
we are in New York City this year with the Blanket Project. It is the 25th anniversary of 9/11. We want to pay tribute to first responders because 9/11. First responders are some of the most important people in homelessness, but nobody ever talks about them. If your house just burnt down, the first person you're talking to is a firefighter.
Mm-hmm.
If the firefighter knows that your child doesn't have to change schools, that there's a law in the federal government that protects your child's relationship with school regardless of homelessness, so you've got to go stay across town with grandma. You just became homeless. If someone could say, here's a pamphlet, here's some information, there will be a cab or an Uber or a bus that goes to grandma's house and brings your child to school, to their school. They lost their home. They are not losing their English teacher. They are not losing their best friend, Billy. They are only losing their home because that's enough. If the
Exactly.
sheriff comes to your house because your landlord didn't pay his taxes and locks you out of your apartment, you're not getting your security deposit back. You're going into homelessness. If the sheriff knows your kid doesn't lose their school, if the sheriff knows that there's a food program, if the sheriff, so first responders could play such an important role in homelessness, especially people on that worst day of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
So we really want to pay tribute to first responders. Domestic violence situation, the first person you're going to meet is the person who's just arrested the man who swore to love you and protect you for the rest of your life. So those people are really important. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be making little string backpacks with
Oh, wow.
memorialblanket.org on them and,
Yeah.
you know, our logo and everything. And this was the idea of Ray Gun, who is a shirt company that we work with. You can buy a shirt and $4 comes to the Charles Bruce Foundation to, you know, work on the blanket project. But what we're going to do is we are going to give you the backpack for free. And what we want you to do is think about what you would want in it if I handed it to you the day you were locked out of your house. Do you want a can opener? Because you're
Mm-hmm.
not going to be able to open the can of food you get at the food pantry. Do you want clean socks? Do you need tissues because you might have to pee or use the bathroom in a bush because you've lost your bathroom? What do you want? And then you make the first responder kit. And we'll give you the backpack. You give it back to us by December 21st with whatever you feel would be helpful to a person who just learned. I'm on the other end of what you do, Chris, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're at the exact opposite side for this New York event
Mm-hmm.
where I've just lost everything or the access to it. We had a woman that we helped this past month whose apartment burned down. There was fire damage and there was water damage, but she needed to get, she got rehoused really rapidly. It was about 3 weeks, which was miraculous. And that was
Amazing.
mostly because she didn't lose her mind and she kept her nose to the grindstone because it's not easy to find an apartment. I mean, you've just been traumatized, like you said, and you've got to find an apartment and your kid's got to stay in school. And, but she needed to get into the apartment so she could get her things, maybe not her toothbrush anymore, but the things she could salvage from well, she wasn't the owner of the building. She wasn't the city that put new restraint locks on all the doors so nobody could go in and vandalize a burned out building. So in order to get back into the place where you don't have those things for a while, what's going in that backpack? And maybe it's $5 gift cards for McDonald's or Burger King or somewhere that you can grab breakfast on your way to work because you got to go back to work the next day. right? So we're going to really highly stress this year at the Memorial Blanket Project exactly what would you want if it happened to you. And then the other people that I think that are really transformed by this project we do is the people creating the blankets. And you live with someone who's one of our absolute best blanket makers, so most faithful and always makes several. She never just gives us one blanket. She makes several blankets. She's so generous. And I would love to know, I mean, these are people who think, they've got a family member that said, please, Nana, no more scarves. Like they love to create, but their families all already got an Afghan, right? They've been crocheting for 65 years. There's nobody left to, make a tea cozy for. And they find out about us and they self-select and they say, yeah, I could make a blanket. I could do that. But they make them for us all the time. Like once someone's made one blanket, they make them year after year after year, right?
And that's
People
fabulous.
made blankets for us and then they're elderly, they pass, then their family donates all their stuff to us because this became something that was a manifestation of them. My ability to make a difference is woken in people, awoken or whatever the word is that wakes up.
And that's what's interesting too, because the people that are listening on the regular podcast or watching us on the YouTube, is there are probably people out there that have sewing skills and crocheting skills. What are some of the best ways, if they were looking online, say with Facebook, is it hashtag Memorial Blanket generally, or?
I think it is Homeless Remembrance Blanket Project on Facebook.
Mhm.
The best thing to do is just go to memorialblanket.org.
Gotcha.
And then there's a button you can push. We actually have a blanket project Facebook page for every state. We really did that for the Washington, D.C., and you had asked me about that. We put 18,000 square feet of blankets on the west lawn of the U.S. Capitol. It
Wow.
was about 1,200 blankets. Handmade, every one of them must have been 600,000 hours of work there, right? $500,000 worth of materials, 1,000 or more volunteers. I mean, we don't have a single paid employee and 1,000 people got together to do something. It's just mind boggling, right?
That's the thing that we need to make infectious. We've got about 2 minutes left. We need to make infectious for everybody. And you've probably done this too. I've had volunteers that have come to me that have to do community service work. And what's fun is when they have the epiphany, the light comes on, it's like, oh my gosh, what I'm doing actually matters to somebody else. In other words, they get to look beyond themselves. What amazes me too is how things snowball. And I think the biggest thing that we can do with this podcast is try to open more doors. One of the things that I discovered when they were doing the different things at the park over in Cape Heart and also over by Co-Park, which is over by Shaw House in Bangor, is there are a lot of single parents. They're smart. They have enthusiasm. They give a damn about their neighborhood. But no one's ever said, hey, you've got a lot of brains up here and you've got a lot in here in your heart. Would you like to get involved? And I would love to see this podcast inspire somebody to get in touch with myself or yourself or go to the website. And that website again is
memorialblanket.org. And if you're
.org.
in New England, we pick blankets up starting pretty much early November. So we'll stop. I usually stop in the Springfield, Massachusetts area, the Boston area, stop in Portsmouth. So if we have one woman who collects blankets in New Jersey who's fabulous. So I'll do a pickup all through the fall because I drive back and forth to Maine all the time. And I just make my route go where people are going. But then we also have, on starting November 1st, you will be posted where to mail your blanket to. We get blankets from all over the country. I just got one from Florida. We try to discourage people from shipping them prior to Thanksgiving because we don't want to have to store them all. And then we also get them from around the world. We
That's
consistently get
fantastic.
Australia blankets, Germany.
Wow.
Yeah.
And here's the thing to close out. First of all, I want to say thank you, because not only for being here for this podcast, but also inspiring me to get involved in the podcast. And one of the things that I would like to share, we have a lot of support from the local UPS store. I would love to introduce you to the co-owner. I don't know if you remember Rick Marston and his wife Jill.
Yeah.
They co-own the UPS store along with Melissa Braley. And I bet if we talked to them, they might be able to get in touch with the UPS stores around the country who might maybe even offer discount to ship quilts as their contribution, because they have the boxes. They're invaluable.
Yeah, and we do get about, I'd say at least 50 blankets from all over the country are just mailed in. So, and then, but we collect, the most of them are central Pennsylvania, 600 maybe, but all the rest, anywhere from 500 to 700 more, are from people somewhere else.
Beautiful. Well, again, Pat, thank you so much. Hold on for just a minute. People, places, and parables. If you would like to be interviewed or you have a program you'd like to see featured on here, just reach out to us. Emails on the website. And thank you once again for all the work and caring you give. There's nothing like sharing the gift of compassion and having empathy. Spread that stuff around. Thanks, Pat.
Thanks, Chris.